that men simply are giving up hope on marriage because they're feeling beaten down?
No, I don't think they're giving up on hope on marriage. I think what they're doing is they're looking at it, the cost reward. Men look at things in terms of cost analysis. And the penalties for marriage are so high and the rewards now are so low. First of all, there's legal costs of marriage. There are so many men now who are just saying, you know what, it's just not worth it to me. I'm going to be stuck paying the alimony. I'm going to be stuck paying for child support. And it's not just legal reasons. It's also psychological ones where men feel that basically they don't really have rights in marriage. Women hold all the cards now in reproduction and all kinds of things, and men don't.
Back to the adage, brother, that I've said before in the past, that a broken man is a hopeless man, and a hopeless man is a very dangerous man. Before you choose wisely.
That's not what she's talking about. Right, that's not what she's talking about. What she's talking about is this is the best way to use it so you can get the most leverage in your divorce or custody. And that's not what a protective order is supposed to be for. Now, what she is saying, lots of people say, but what's absolutely stunning is that she is in the prosecutor's office and sitting there and coaching divorce lawyers. And I don't, maybe, but I don't think so. I think that she knew the camera was there. She was that brazen that she thought she could go tell a whole bunch of divorce lawyers, here's the most effective way. And she goes on later on to say, you don't want to file charges because once you file charges, you bring us in. Instead, you do it this way. You get around the charges, but then you use it in your divorce. And you say, oh, you don't know how to file, call us. We'll help you. As if, if you're a divorce lawyer, you don't know how to file protective order, you're not really all that good at your job. Like you need the prosecutor to walk you through how to file a proper protective order. But again, the most important thing about that video that you played is the person saying it, not the message. That message is played all around, no big deal. Everyone knows about how to misuse them. What's absolutely stunning is that is an assistant prosecutor telling divorce lawyers how to do it. We talk about the silver bullet technique all the time, and that is proof positive that this thing is spread and lots of people know about it all the way into the prosecutor's office. But somebody put that on YouTube. It's spread in a lot of different channels. So in a sense, it's sort of like the Streisand effect. It's had the ripple effect that people are noticing that a lot of people do this, as opposed to they're teaching a lot of people to do this. And so that's a really important video because it shows how corrupt the system is, that these assistant prosecutors know very well how to do these protective orders. And there she is telling all of her divorce lawyer buddies how to do it.
Mike, when I first heard about you, it was because I came across this silver bullet technique. Mm-hmm. And I came across you, and it was a guy named Sheldon. What's his name?
Neil Shelton.
Neil Shelton. It was Neil Shelton who has a book, I believe, called Growing Up Mayberry.
Right, but
Growing Up Mayberry.
But and I'm not going to remember. There's a journalist out of North Carolina who interviewed me for part. I wish I could. He's a really big deal in North Carolina, more than the book. That he did like a 3-minute segment about how the silver bullet technique was used on Neil. And Bob Buckley is his name, and that was done, I think, in 2016. And that's sort of what popularized the silver bullet technique. The first time I heard about that was in an episode of Law and Order SVU, where they were just talking outside of court and somebody was explaining it. And then Elliot Stabler's character said, oh, the silver bullet technique. And the guy looked at him and said, my ex-wife was thinking about it when she wanted to do one lawyer, but then she decided to go with a more ethical lawyer. And I had it in the background as I was doing something. And when I heard him say silver bullet technique, I replayed it and I said, wait a minute, I've seen that before a lot. And he's calling it the silver bullet technique. And it's weird because, Law and Order SVU is a big deal. It didn't really take off from that. It took off starting with Neil, and just everybody else started to use it. There's a reporter on CNN who interviewed a bunch of fathers. She used it. It's come up a lot now. And so most people, the way I define the silver bullet technique is the misuse of protective orders, but some people just say false allegations. But when you either issue a completely false or a completely manipulated allegation of abuse to get a protective order to use as leverage in custody or divorce or something similar to that, that's the silver bullet technique. And it's called the silver bullet technique. It's very, very powerful. Used effectively, you can get someone out of their house. You can keep them away from their money, their kids. You get a bunch of leverage because that protective order for a year, whatever it is, usually it's a year. If you can get it on yourself and your kids, they can't see you and your kids. Beyond that, it's a hammer. You can go into court it depends on the judge, but you go into court 2 years, 3 years from later, and you say, I had to get a protective order. It labels you. It's a label. And the most important thing is when you're the target, the way you were, of a protective order, you're treated very similar to a criminal, except with almost none of the rights. These hearings are very quick. The way it happened to you, I'm assuming, was she went in ex parte, which means you weren't there. She presented a case. It's really easy to present a compelling case when there's nothing on the other side. So she got it. Now that's temporary, folks. At some point, Ulysses had a chance to counter it. But, one of the first guys I talked to about this is Ronald Pierce, and he made the point, yeah, okay, I got it. There was a protective order. There was a hearing where I got to present my case. But look, by the time you go in there, they all think you're guilty. Well, they wouldn't have issued one if you weren't guilty. And again, it depends on the judge, it depends on the court, but a lot more times than not, that's the exact attitude. And you're really behind the eight ball. That's not the way the criminal process works, but you're not a criminal technically. Of course, you're treated very similar to one. You can't have a gun. You may have to do domestic violence classes. You may have to pay money. You have to stay away from the party. And if you share children with the party, you may have to stay away from your children. And so it's a very effective hammer. Neil, they came up with just some ridiculously bogus. He played me a part of a video where his ex-wife said, well, he never hit me during our marriage. He always scared me. And now that we're getting divorced, all the mental issues, she actually used the term mental issues. I don't know what that means, but, and she got it. And then she would claim that he had driven by her house and he would get arrested. And, she had as a lawyer, a woman named Sarah Stevens, who's the president pro tempore it's in North Carolina, the North Carolina State House. She's one of the 3 or 4 most powerful politicians in the state, along with being a divorce lawyer. And of course, she leverages both. And that's part of the reason she could get it, because through you have someone like that walk in with you, what judge is going to deny it? And by the way, she has all kinds of sway over the judges in, loose and indefinite ways. But of course, the judges know who she is. Of course, the judges understand that if you cross her, it's going to be a problem for you down the road, so never cross her. And that's how his ex-wife, that's how she got him out of the house. That's how she kept him away from the kids. And then, and she used that forever. Even after the protective order expired, you go into court. That's why, as I said, that's why I had to have it. It's the perfect textbook against Neil. He was eventually able to get out of it because Bob Buckley is a big deal. He had some other people. He got a lot of media attention, which generally doesn't happen. But it was used very effectively against him.
So, Michael, we have a lot of incredible people here with us this evening. And believe me, I am one who sees quality over quantity when it comes to this conversation. There are a lot of people who are learning about this. And then there are a lot of people who have been what I will call the victims of this. Now, they may not stay victims. There's some people here who are fighting and who have fought. But the fact of the matter is that when you are taken off guard, when you don't see it coming, you are at first a victim. You
Right.
have been abused. And when I look
Correct.
at Neil Sheldon, when I look at the McNee situation, I want to talk some about your book. But I see Father X has his hand up. Folks, what I'm going to ask is, as Michael has to leave here, we got, like I said, some brilliant people on this call tonight, and I want to hear from people because I want to respect everybody's time. I want everybody to have some input in this. I want to show this again. I want people to understand what you said, Michael, and that was, she is a prosecutor.
An
She
assistant prosecutor.
Assistant. She is standing in front of
Divorce
divorce lawyers, telling them how to use this. Now, if I could show this, and I'm not going to attempt this, if I could show this, there are 226,000 views of the video that I shared. There are thousands of remarks on that video. The people who are seeing this and going, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me.
That was the reaction as it initially like somehow leaked. It got in a lot of places. I saw it on Facebook. I saw it on Twitter. I saw it everywhere. And the shocking part again is not the message, but the messenger. That was just stunning that an assistant, what I mean by assistant prosecutor, she's not the one who was elected, but the elected official either hired her or kept her on after they were elected. But
so is it fair, Mike, to say that she represents him?
Absolutely right. Okay. She's in the office, but she wasn't the one elected. So she's not the head of the office. But yeah, to say it's inappropriate is just ridiculous. And think about it. The job of the prosecutor's office, the DA's, most states it's called a DA, is to prosecute crimes. What is this woman doing, talking to divorce attorneys, explaining how to properly do protective orders? What does that have to do with prosecuting any sort of crime? It has nothing to do with it. How does she even know that this is a thing? How does she even know the right way to do this? Why? How is that happening? And I don't know what, if anything, I don't know what, if anything, happened to her, but she should have been fired. This is an outrageous thing that she was doing. To use the resources of the prosecutor's office to go to divorce attorneys and explain to them how to misuse protective orders, you shouldn't have a job after that. And the DA, the head of the office, absolutely had the power to fire her. And if he didn't, then shame on him or her, whoever was the elected DA.
And so I just keep having to underscore this because we always expect, and I think rightfully so, that the people who are in those offices will uphold the highest integrity. The highest integrity. We should expect that they are not going to do these types of things. Is that correct? We should expect that, right?
We should, but who are you voting for and what is their message? And usually the person you're voting for, it goes one of two ways. They either are tough on crime or now the reverse, we're going to take on the police corruption. And so you rarely hear, I'm going to run an ethical office. You rarely hear, I'm not going to violate Brady, for instance, which is withholding exculpatory evidence, which happens all the time. One of the problems is, who are you voting for? Who do you want as the DA? What is the message you as the voter want to hear? And it's usually, I want someone who's going to put the bad guys away. Well, that sounds good in theory, but if the ends justify the means and all that matters to you is how many bad guys go to jail, then you don't care how they put them in jail. And that's where you get these unethical DAs. And this is a sign of an unethical DA, because what is his employee, this woman, doing? Why was he, look, whether he was unaware or not, what was she doing? Why would this be a part of anything except that, culture rises from the top. All right. When Jack Welch was running GE, it was completely different than everyone after him, because he set a culture, and great CEOs set a culture. Great elected politicians is the same way. And this is the result of the culture in Wilkinson County. that this lady is in front of divorce attorneys talking about protective orders. It has nothing to do with her job, and it's completely unethical.
Mike, I sat with a group of men the other night, and we were looking at the entire video. We tore it apart. We tore it. It's a 39-minute video. If somebody wants to find it, it can be found. If you can't find it, I can help you find it. 39 minutes. There comes a point in this video where she says that if you bring a witness into the room and the witness says out of their mouth that I had blood on my shirt, that's one thing, she says. She says, but if you can show us a picture like this, and then she pulls up a picture of a woman with blood on her shirt, she says, this is much better. You've seen that, right?
Right.
Is this not leading? Is this not illegal?
Right. That sounds like a prosecutor who wants to win. And look, that's one of the biggest problems with prosecutors. Prosecutors, technically, when you look at their website and understand what the supposed philosophy is, to seek justice. That's their job. But their real job is to seek convictions and plea deals. So this is someone who knows the angles and who knows what evidence gets to the jury the best and to get a conviction. And it doesn't matter if the evidence is legitimate. The key for her is to win. And I did a story with several years ago, Anna Siga-Nicolazzi, who is now on ID. She does a show called True Conviction. She was exactly like that. She had a 25-0 record, and a lot of her cases she cheated. And it didn't come out until she was 25-0, and now she's got a show on True Conviction. So you ask, why do they do this? Well, you look at Anna. You know, she was the star in The Office. She's completely unethical. Would withhold evidence anytime she wanted. It's the same kind of thing. And you know, eventually she kind of got busted, but by then she was such a star that ID gave her a show. So what's the difference? She makes probably like 3 times as much doing that show as she did as a prosecutor anyway. So what? She did. It's called The Grid Kid Killer. John Juca, that's her most famous case, including on 2020. And she coerced witnesses. She withheld. She did everything she could to get a conviction in that case because it was a high-profile case. Can't lose that case. Like, what do you think happened to the prosecutors in the OJ case? Guess what? Their stars went diminished, and you can't lose those cases. But can I talk real quickly about Chris Matney's
Please,
story?
that was my next question.
So Chris, and I wrote the book Bullied to Death. Chris became kind of a star after he died because he wrote a suicide note that he posted online. His ex-wife tried to copyright a suicide note. I kid you not. If you can find it, Eugene Volokh, who has his own website, is probably the most prominent First Amendment person in the country, teaches at UCLA. He wrote about it. A lot of other people did. But because of that suicide note, his story blew up. But at the beginning of the divorce, he and his ex-wife Dina were still technically married, but the divorce had started. They were still living in the same house. And she went using her first set of lawyers, got a protective order in the same way as you, where she got an ex parte. He didn't know it was coming. He was served. They're still in the house. He talks to his lawyer. His lawyer says, look, you have no choice. You have to get out of the house. So what she used was an argument that turned that where Chris called the police. Now this is how the protective orders are effectively used. It doesn't matter that Chris called the police. It doesn't matter that she was the aggressor. She's the one who got the protective order. When she went into court, Chris wasn't there. She told her story. Well, she gets a protective order. Yeah, Chris gets to argue later, but her story's already been told. It's basically he said, she said. They already believed her. Now they believe her again. She got the protective order. I think it was either 6 months or 12 months. And this is how crazy corrupt the system is. So he does nothing. So there's no reason for her to get the protective order extended. So she walks into court after it's ready to expire and says, oh yeah, and by the way, I forgot, while we were together, Chris once pointed a shotgun to my head. So actually it's a lot more dangerous than I first told you. Now think about that. If Chris, while they were married now, not since the protective order was in place. So this happened before the first protective order. I'm supposed to believe you go in for a protective order and the guy you want to get a protective order once put a shotgun to your head and you forgot? You're trying to get a protective order, but you forgot? And they granted it to her. And that's how corrupt the system is. The judge then said, well, hold on. That sounds a little crazy that he put a gun to your head and you got a protective order and you forgot to tell me then. And now all of a sudden you remember. And then look, she just kept renewing it. And he never saw the inside of his house again. He got zero out of the equity. And I don't know how much equity, there's plenty. And he eventually never saw his kids again. And of course, she used it the same way. It's a hammer. And it was like the start of the pyramids. From there, they got him charged with more and more serious crimes until all his money ran out. He moved to Texas. This is out of Virginia. They had him extradited back. He didn't have money. It's not even that he didn't want to pay child support, but he didn't have the money. They kept going after him for child support. He sends this email where he says, unless you reduce the child support, I'm going to the media. And the lawyers actually had him charged with extortion, saying unless you reduce the child support, I'm going to the media, some form of extortion. He was extradited on Con Air, the real Con Air. And he did get found not guilty, but then they scheduled more hearings. And basically, he was just borne out with life. But that protective order was the start of that domino falling. He killed himself December 29, 2013. The protective order was taken out in the summer of 2010. It was basically like a 3.5 years of this ever increasing pressure. And that protective order started it. It's a hammer. It's a perfect example of the silver bullet technique. And in that case, it's the ultimate outcome. And it's not the only one. Neil, when
this is Neil Sheldon we're talking about now.
Right. We were talking and I said, how many people you think have these against them? And he's like, let's do an experiment. And he put on Facebook, how many of you have had a protective order filed against you, a bogus one? Hundreds and hundreds of people flocked to the post. And by the way, more men than women, but don't think it's only men,
right?
Or that it's 99, it's not 99 to 1. The reason more men have it is because it's easier to believe that a man would be the aggressor. But a devious man knows how to use it, and they figure out how to use it. And look, women can equalize these things with weapons, a knife, a gun, a stun gun. So don't think, because you're stronger and bigger, that means you're going to win in a physical altercation. If they're pointing a gun at you, you can be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or you can be me or you, and you're not going to win. All right, nobody's going to win against a gun. So a woman can easily equalize
Mike, when you got to take a break, man, feel free to take a break. I know what's going on your side of the camera.
Right. All right. I gotta take a break, and then I'll be.
All right, everybody. That is Michael Volpe. He is our guest speaker tonight. We're doing things in a more fluid way than we did the last time. I showed the video for those people who haven't seen the video of Leslie Levy telling people that they should use protective orders. I'm going to show this one more time. All right.
Yep.
What does that mean?
What's that?
A protection from abuse.
There was something going on between you two.
Yes.
that she didn't like, all right? So she filed a protection from abuse order against you.
Protective order carries criminal consequences. Accordingly, that makes it a pretty heavy tool in negotiating a divorce. If it goes through my office, it's a lot harder to use it in negotiating a settlement to your divorce. So I would encourage you very strongly, if you have one of those cases, to do the protective order as part of your case. It gives you more leverage in negotiating settlement. If you're like, well, that's great, I don't know what a protective order looks like, shoot us a message, we'll send you forms. We are willing to help, we're willing to kind of walk you through the process, but our attitude is, if you can do holistic representation for your client, it's better for the client, it's better outcomes in terms of...
I just can't believe that. All right. So once again, I'm showing a video of me the day that I was evicted, August the 4th, 2021. And in that video, I have no idea what's going on. I am totally taken off guard. Nothing has happened, but I've been charged with something without actually having to go to court, without being given an opportunity. And as Mike was saying, what happens from there, it's like all downhill for me because my ex-wife now has an advantage and I'm essentially a criminal. 2 nights ago, just this past Monday, I sat with about 6 men and we looked at the entire Levy, I don't know if it's Levy or Levi, the entire video. And I encourage everybody to look at this. My work going forward primarily immediately is going to be to bring to task all of the district attorneys that I can reach around the country and ask them to have something to say about this video. I think that if in a small county like Williamson County, Texas, that this can be pulled off. If she can do it there, if she's got the confidence, courage, if she feels like she's got the support of an office where she can come on and tell attorneys to use false allegations, and let there be no doubt, that is what is being explained here. How to use false allegations to get a leg up in a divorce. Now, false allegations can be used outside of a divorce. They can be used anytime. The problem is that they are not challenged, and what Stop False Allegations Against Men represents is a campaign to challenge these false allegations. One attorney that was on with us last month, Padita Jafari out of Los Angeles, said it's an epidemic. It's an epidemic. And I don't think that people understand that this isn't just hurting men. It's hurting mothers whose sons have to go through this. It's hurting sisters whose brothers go through this. It's hurting a lot of people. And there's some people on this call that I know pretty well who have been hurt by this. I want to get around the board and get some questions answered. I want some input as well. I'm going to ask Father X if you would unmute. Father X was with us the other night. Father X, you can explain why you go by Father X and tell people how they can find more information about you and the work that you do. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Sure. Can you hear me fine?
I hear you fine. Can everybody else hear him?
They're all
Good.
muted. So the kosher clinician can hear me.
All right.
I want to also add some comments on what Michael was talking about and some context, because I loved his energy and I loved his passion. And I want to add some clarifying points to what he said. But I am Father X. I was hit with a silver bullet years ago and in a custody case. And my ex had me falsely arrested. And it was a shocker. I remember the first week, the first few months, I was behind the 8 ball. You're always reeling until you realize the con that's happening in this con game.
Say that word again, please, because I want people to understand what that word that you said was. What is it?
The con?
It's a con, C-O-N.
C-O-N.
It's a con game, yes.
Yeah. It's, whenever you go to the street and you see street hustlers playing the shell game or 3-card Monte on the street, right? You always lose. You're always the sucker if you watch them for 2 minutes. You think you're going to win. You go lay down a bet. You win a little bit. You bet big, and then you lose. Right. It's the con game. But if you watch the con game for 15 or 20 minutes, you understand the con and you understand how to get around it. And I spent 40 months fighting for custody of my son and fighting these false allegations and making my allegations of my own, because my ex physically abused me in the home. She was the perpetrator of domestic violence in real life. When we got into court, everybody just assumed she was the victim. And after 40 months, I got custody of my son, primary custody, and I've been raising him ever since. And I got an order of protection against the mother for 2 years as a final order. And the order of protection against me was dropped, and the criminal charges were dropped after only 3 months. So that's my story. And now, because I know the system is broken, and I know that after Johnny Depp, I know that tons of guys are going through this still. So I made my own channel called Father X, How Fathers Can Win Child Custody on YouTube, where I go into detail. It's a tutorial. It's educational videos, not just telling my story, but saying how this happens all over the country, teaching dads, this is how the system is broken. This is how you overcome the incompetence of family court, the gender bias of family court. And these are their weaknesses. These are your weaknesses. This is your battle plan. Right. And I've got 29 videos so far, and I'm making more. Right. Because I got to get people from 0% knowledge to 80% knowledge in like 3 weeks. Otherwise, you get steamrolled. So I wanted to add, Ulysses, a few comments on what Michael Volpe was saying. First, I think he started talking about the silver bullet, and I think he was alluding to the idea that maybe it started around 2016 or so. I can assure you it existed by the year 2010.
I think that's when he said he came into knowledge of it.
2010? Okay.
That's when he came into knowledge.
All right. And I'm betting that it was in existence starting in the year 2000, and it just started growing. Second of all, I would like Michael to know that he talked about the person who made the videotape. Maybe he doesn't know, but it's Jeff Morgan out of Texas. And, you know, it might help Michael. He might want to call Jeff Morgan and contact him. Jeff Morgan has his own YouTube channel and Facebook channel, and he videotaped this, and he asked the question about domestic violence. Third, this session with Leslie is a continuing education video, right? And it's common to have continuing education classes for lawyers and DAs talking to lawyers. This is all common, normal stuff. Though, of course, obviously, what's wrong is you shouldn't teach them how to commit fraud, right? Because that's just criminal and immoral and morally repugnant, right? So having a session is normal. Having a session where you're teaching fraud is what's wrong. Third, he talks about, and I think we all talk about, how can she do this? How can she teach this way? How can she tell people to do this? You know from her tone of voice, her presentation, the fact that her bosses sent her there, at no point does Leslie think there's anything wrong with what she's talking about. There's an old saying, evil people don't know that they are evil, right? Bigots don't know that they are bigots. That's the problem here. It's so ingrained in their mindset and in their culture, they think all of this is okay, right? So when you talk about, you know, her boss approved of it, and you know, you got to get rid of the boss because the leadership goes from top down. That's not, unfortunately, true at all. In reality, however many DAs there are in this office versus the Dallas office versus the LA office, this toxic culture of fraud and false allegations and the acceptance of false allegations, it's permeated the entire family court system, the district attorneys, child support magistrates, child protective services, police departments. It's all over the place. This isn't a thing where you can cut the head off the snake. This is a thing where you have to fire 90% of the people. You can't retrain them because they're just not retrainable. And I'll tell you that I came across maybe 50 people, more or less, during my 4-year journey. Actually, it was longer because I had child support after that. I also received child support now because I'm a custodial parent. I ran through countless police officers, district attorneys, child support magistrates, family court lawyers, child protective services, and private attorneys. And the culture is by far one of gender discrimination, one of incompetence, one of laziness across the board. Leslie is not an exception. She's a dime a dozen. So I think it's important to recognize that. And I think Michael also spoke about voting. And a lot of people say, hey, let's vote for the right person. Personally, I think the concept of voting is 100% worthless. The only people that you get to vote for are the two people who run. And they talk about climate issues, crime issues, immigration issues. Nobody's talking about or exposing the family law cartel and saying, I will destroy the family law cartel. So you can't vote for somebody that's going to do that because nobody ever talks about it, right? So I think voting is, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody else has a smarter idea, but I think voting is a kind of a worthless way to go. I'll go silent so that other folks can talk.
I appreciate
unless you have questions.
No, I appreciate everything you're saying, man. And like I said, there are a number of people who are on this call who have had experiences that would probably agree with you. I know people want to believe in the voting, but I think this is a very complex and ingrained problem. It is, I like what you say about the snake in the heads. You can take off the snake head, but the rest of the body it's still contaminated, and it will continue to do what it's doing. When I talked to Michael the other day, I remember saying to him that some people would go to this place where they say things like it's a conspiracy, and I say no, it's part of the business plan. Father X, I have backed away from this idea that even with public education that it's broken. It functions the way the people want it to function. The people who are running it are running it the way that they want it to run. I'm going to go to my buddy Craig over here. Craig, I see you there, man. Can you come off of mute?
Hey, man, sorry, I'm cooking dinner for my son. Thank God I have.
Hey, Craig, the beautiful thing about most of the people here is that we can appreciate, like Mike had to hop off to take care of his child. I know you got Max over there. We all are trying to start a revolution and raise a family at the same time. So I get what's going on, man. Go right ahead, brother. Thank you for being here.
And what I wanted to say is, number one, I agree with Father X that you're not going to vote your way out of this. You have to criminalize these false allegations, and it's pathetic how they don't criminalize it in any way. Like, there's no consideration for the obvious lying that goes on and punishing that. And I think until you do that, you won't stop this trend. The other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, just like you have the military industrial complex, you have the prison industrial complex. This is absolutely a family law industrial complex. I mean, just as an example, on February 6th, I woke up just the way I had for the last 16 years, married to my wife, and I went to bed that night in a jail cell, you know, in jail for domestic battery under totally trumped up charges. Over the next 6 months, I spent almost $170,000, the majority of which I frankly didn't have. I borrowed it. I sold things that, you know, I just found it, you know, but in what world, you know, I make $150,000 a year. In what world do I suddenly go hand $176,000 to a bunch of lawyers in 6 months? I mean, I would have, if you had said that this was going to happen, I'd be like, dude, whatever you're smoking, pass it over here. You know, there's just no way, but that's the reality. And think of that family law cartel. Like, all of a sudden, this machine is just like a giant Hoover, just sucking you dry. Now, that's what I wanted to share.
Craig, thank you so much, man. And thank you, as I see my brother Nasir is here as well. I want to thank everybody for being along for the ride. I think that people can say there's nothing you can do about it, but that's not the position to take. There's got to be something we can do about it. And I think that this Leslie Levy video, again, exposes, and I'm going to say this again, I have the entire video. It's about 38, 39 minutes long. If you think that we've pulled out, or I've pulled out certain segments to prove my point, you're wrong. If you look at the whole thing, it's worse than the segments that I showed. At some point in this video, Father X, you refresh my memory of the guy's name who filmed it. He asked
Jeff Morgan.
Jeff Morgan. Jeff Morgan is sitting there, and Jeff Morgan asked the question, are there any penalties for filing false allegations? Father X, you remember that, right? He says,
yeah, he definitely asked that, and she definitely.
And what did she say?
Well, my generalization is she ran away like a coward, but specifically what she did when she's taught before that question, she was talking about very specific instances of the law and examples of women being beaten. When he asked that question about false allegations, all of a sudden her tone of voice changed, and she started coming up with theoretical concepts like, maybe you can ask for money damages or lawyer's fees, you know, maybe you can file a complaint for perjury or a motion on perjury.
Right.
As she spoke about them as theoretical concepts, which trigger for me, she's never seen this in real life. It's such a foreign idea to answer the question. She has to come up with a theoretical construct because she has no real life examples of this.
And so what people need to understand is that the lawyers understand, like this prosecutor understood, that you can get away with it. You can get away with it. More than likely, you can is say it happened. And if you say it happened first, if you are the petitioner and you say it happened first, you are on your way to a victory. I just saw, and this has nothing to do with divorce, but I'll give you another example. I was just looking at a young football player, went to San Diego State. I just saw this story today. Football player who went to San Diego State and was drafted by the Buffalo Bills. And once he got into the league, it was discovered that some young lady in his past. I think his name was Mark Ariza or something like that. You can look it up. He played for the Buffalo Bills. That she made a false allegation against him. He was immediately, like Trevor Bauer of the Los Angeles Dodgers, he was immediately removed from the team. And he is now fighting for his life. He is fighting for everything that he's not going to, he said it, he says, my life has been ruined with one false allegation. The one thing that a lot of people don't get is the pain that comes with this. We talk about this from a legal standpoint, because I think sometimes people don't understand the pain. In the last forum that we did, there were some conversations about suicide and people committing suicide. And people don't understand that when an allegation is levied at you, that you don't just kind of stoically try to address it. You become disoriented. You become distressed. You are destabilized because you are removed from your home. You're disoriented. If it takes you off guard and you thought this person loved you, it will really mess you up. Kosher clinician, please.
Well, that goes back to the adage, brother, that I've said before in the past, that a broken man is a hopeless man, and a hopeless man is a very dangerous man. The prevailing issue with modern men in modern time is the minimization of masculinity. And many times you see the minimization of masculinity, not only through the media, but sometimes in academia, and also sometimes when it comes down to, life and refuge. I am a licensed therapist, and my YouTube channel is The Kosher Clinician. I take clinical concepts and turn into urban trends. And while my heart is to see all men liberated, I do have a special place in my heart for men of color because of our unique struggles. But it's unfortunate, Butch, because I've been through it. I've been through false allegations. I've lost probably about 3 jobs on false allegations. I lost my job to teach based on baseless allegations. It was very daunting. It was very sad. It was very disorienting. There were thoughts of revenge. And it impacted me in a myriad of ways, because I believe in the fallacy of the American dream. I believe in the myth of meritocracy, meaning that you do what you need to do and you're going to be rewarded. But when you're a 6'5" black man with a bald head to speak well, you become public enemy number 1 to the world. And so it was very daunting, to say the least. And I've seen a lot of men, black and white, go through the things that I've been through. And that's why these conversations are important, to eradicate this nebulous cycle, or this dark cycle of having, men in this level of not only tyranny, but this karmic cycle where men don't see no resolve. Because, many times, you don't have the time to be stoic, because men traditionally now in the West, we don't have an assembly of brothers or an assembly of a brotherhood where men come together as one to more or less eradicate or more or less reduce some of the pain and struggles that they have. We don't have it. At one point, it was the church, specifically the black church, or churches in general, but they have become so defunct, or have become defunct as well, when they tend to minimize the importance of men, boys, and masculinity, to say the least.
And so I see Nasser makes the comment. He says, I reported my silver bullet as attorney misconduct to the Maryland Bar Association, said no wrongdoing was done. And so you wind up going to the body of people that your lawyer is protected by, expecting for them to hold that person accountable. I had to fire an attorney in this process, because it seemed to me that she wasn't actually on my side, and I felt like I could not win. So before we get toward the end of this conversation, I want to say again, the Leslie Levy video is one that has been seen 226,000 times on my YouTube channel, 226,000 times. And people are blown away. It's like they did not know that this was going on. I believe awareness is a big part of this. So what are we accomplishing? We are accomplishing awareness that was not there before. So many people, Craig, you and I talked about this before. So many people had never even heard of the silver bullet. I had never heard of the silver bullet, Craig. And we didn't know that we were, as Father X said earlier, we didn't know that we were involved with three-card Monte, as they called it. I watched people play that game in Chicago when I was growing up. You sit at the back of the bus, somebody sits down, they start shuffling something. Sometimes they got shells, sometimes they got cards, and you sitting there watching, and it's like, oh, I got it. And you don't realize that it's not just one person playing, but they're like two or three other people sitting off to the side, pretending to be just passengers on the bus, when in fact they are part of the game that's being played. Craig,
That's the family law cartel. That's the family law cartel at work. And I think I CC'd you on my email to the Lomita sheriffs today, where I supplied them information about the silver bullet. And I said, look, I'm coming after this police officer legally for being completely incompetent, gender biased, and ignoring my obvious medical situation. So, I'm determined to educate as much as I can and spread the word about the silver bullet. I frankly found it a lot of bullshit that senior management at the Lomita Sheriff in Southern California had never heard of the silver bullet. But okay, now you can't say that anymore. And when I offer to bring my friend Butch in to speak to your police officers, and you say no thank you, then you're just part of the system. You're part of the problem.
And when we do that, Craig, this is why these forums are important, because it can't just be me as an individual. It needs to be me and Craig, and me and Kosher, and me and Father X, and me. It needs to be a group of people who are saying, oh, we see it now. And now that we see it, we are going to expose it, because more people need to be aware that this is going on. Father X, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, what I would like to share with this group, something Ulysses and I spoke about a few days ago, the concept of domestic violence, right? And across this entire industry, they operate at a kindergarten level, right? You can be at a kindergarten level, you can be at a high school level, you can be at a college level. And the way I've seen all of these people in this industry, if you think that domestic violence against women is a bad thing, and women should not be victims of domestic violence, which a lot of these people think, that's how they think, and they want to protect women, that's kindergarten level. That's so obvious. Nobody wants their mother or their sister or their female cousin beaten. Like, it's kindergarten level. It's so obvious. But that's all they think about, and they can't leave that world of, we have to only protect women because women are victims. If you actually operate at a junior high school or high school level, you come to learn that men are also victims of domestic violence. Right. But that requires like a junior or high school level of intelligence. Right. And that's so far above the kindergarten level that these family court folks operate in. So if you're at seventh grade, you think men can also be victims. If you're at a college level, you elevate your thinking to recognizing, wow, people actually lie about being victims of domestic violence. Women lie, men lie. And when you're at that college level, which none of these kindergarten level government workers operate at, if you're at the college level and somebody comes to you with a case, there's ex parte case, or you get a petition about domestic violence, your first thought is supposed to be, okay, somebody said this other person attacked me. I know that women are victims. I know that men are victims. And I know that people lie. So therefore, as a judge now, or as a police officer, or as a DA, I have to use my brain for thinking. I cannot turn off my brain and just assume the mother's a victim and the father's a perpetrator. I have to actually use my brain for thinking, investigate the facts, learn history, learn who did what and what's really happening here. Unfortunately, this whole system operates at a kindergarten level. That's how I look at it.
And one of the things you and I talked about the other day, which is so very simple, is that if there's never been a call regarding domestic violence and suddenly somebody claims abuse at the same time they're filing for divorce, and everybody knows that this is part of the strategy, that needs to be taken into account. And when I hear Leslie Levy, the attorney that we were listening to earlier, when I hear her say this is a great way to gain leverage in a divorce, you realize that they know. And we have to stop fooling ourselves and thinking that the system has every individual. They're thinking about the best interests of every individual. No, it's a processing. It's almost like courts are a processing system. They just keep processing people. They just keep moving people through. Just move next. It's like next. At some point, somebody has to stop them and stop them strong enough to make the whole system break. You know, we talk about throwing that wrench in the wheel. We need to throw a wrench in this wheel. And I want to be part of that process. And I know that there are people on this call that want to be part of that process. And I say again, there's some things that are going on outside of this conversation that are helping to get that wrench in the wheel. We are coming up on 8:55. Again, I want to respect everybody's time. I know that Mike had to jump out, but this is not the last time we will be doing this. I appreciate everybody's time. Unless there are any final comments, I'm going to start to wrap this up. I'm going to send out some emails to everyone to make sure that you have access to that full video. You need to look at the full video. If you look at my thread on YouTube, you will see, again, there are 226,000 views, but there are also a lot of comments of men saying this happened to me. And there are people who are saying, I cannot believe this is happening. And there are women saying it happened to my brother. And I've seen women say it happened to my husband's ex-wife did this to him. And so we're not just sitting here having, as one guy said to me, a bitch session. That's very disrespectful.
Right.
You know, when we sit here and we do this as men, mostly men, when we sit here and do this, we're whiners. Now, we're not whiners. We are men who are taking action. And part of the action is having these conversations with men all around the country. There are people from all around the country on this call. And there will continue to be men and women all around the country on this call. So I want to say thank you to everyone for being here this evening. I'm going to get out the information as promised, and I'm going to make sure that I stay in contact with each of you individually and that we continue to grow this effort. We're just getting started. This problem didn't just start, so it's not going to be crushed overnight. But I know that there's some people here who are committed to it on the long haul, and I say thank you to everyone for being here. Have a good evening. Good night.
Thank you.
Fire for your mind. The Kosher Clinician.